Welcome to Boardroom Forum Live, responding to ESG Disclosure Requirements series. Today, we're going to be focusing on ESG reporting and data challenges. Data is really integral to ESG reporting because it enables many things, including insights, risk management, performance tracking, and so on. Today, I'm joined by Hanley, who will share with us some insights on how we can leverage the available data, source new data sets to help us report on ESG requirements and how, as organizations, we're doing against our own set ESG objectives and what our stakeholders expect of us. Hanley, could you just share with us for a moment what do you think are the biggest challenges when it comes to ESG reporting?
I think, in my view, ESG reporting is ever evolving. It is very complex, and essentially, we don't know what we don't know. So think of it, if we do financial reporting or we do operational reporting or human capital or whatever other reporting, we have a good idea of what we're reporting on and how we're going to get there. And like financial reporting, it's highly regulated. But with ESG reporting, we don't know what we don't know. It's almost like saying we're trying to put a puzzle together, but we don't know what the end picture looks like. Yeah, so it's a bit of a conundrum. And then if you take the puzzle analogy, for instance, and you think, I have a box with puzzle pieces. It's not that there's only one puzzle in that box. Because of the ESG factors being so broad, there's multiple puzzles in that box. And I don't know how the pictures of the puzzles look.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, Hanley. But I suppose with all of the many frameworks being harnessed, further developed, we can't wait for them to be final and ready, like a framework like IFRS that's been around for many years, and others that are out there, and some regulations as well. So we can't wait. We need to already start working on harnessing the data.
100%. And that's why it's important to understand the complexities of the data. So like, for instance, with your puzzle pieces, they can be different sizes, different complexity, different themes. So it's important to already have a deep knowledge and understanding of the ESG factors out there and focus specifically on them. Another thing is, for instance, knowing the interconnectedness of the ESG factors. Because if you think about it, if you're doing climate reporting, you can actually use social factors, you can use governance factors, and you can use environmental factors. So upfront, it's important to know how these pieces can also be interconnected and plan for them accordingly. Then the other big conundrum is the availability of data, because ESG is so disparate. So it's also understanding what data do you have available and what data you might have to have innovative methodologies for in terms of creating data or sourcing the data. But I don't know about you, but when I build a puzzle, I start with the corners. I don't know where you start, but just like having a plan when you do a puzzle, it is extremely important to have a strategy and knowing where do you want to go and setting yourself up for success along the way. The other thing is, of course, in knowing what we don't know, is that the ESG landscape is forever changing and it's evolving. So it's almost like somebody is adding additional puzzles to the box as we go. So, yeah, ESG
Indeed,
data is challenging.
It's a big challenge, yes. Hanley, please share with us, in your view, what are some of the most important challenges with ESG reporting as it pertains to data?
Sure, David. So I always try to look at it from a top-down, bottom-up. And when I say top-down, I look at the materiality and the relevance of what do we want to report on. You spoke about it earlier, the frameworks, the methodologies, and the KPIs actually differ. So it's important to know where do you want to go from a company as well as the industry and objective perspective from a top-down. Then also from a top-down, because there are so many frameworks and so many different measures and way of looking and quantifying ESG performance measures, it is important to harmonize and to standardize your ESG reporting.
Yes.
Otherwise, you have different people looking at different things, coming to different conclusions, and it actually not driving the benefits that you need it to drive. But now, in terms of bottom up, it doesn't help we've got all of these great plans at the top, but it's actually not achievable. So your data availability and your data quality is key to actually setting yourself up for success. So knowing what data you have available, how you're going to use that data, how you're going to harmonize it, how are you going to make it relevant, but also bottom up, how you're going to integrate it from those sources, and how are you going to manage that data from a governance perspective to make sure that the quality stays relevant and that it drives you forward in terms of your ESG reporting. Now, if you do all of that, you have your reporting set up, but just as important is telling the story and having key KPI metrics that speaks to your business and that you have trained your staff on and trained the people in your different departments on in terms of understanding what it means and what are the impacts of those measures, and then also visually representing them in a way that tells that story.
It does sound like you need to change your business model a little bit to think about redesigning some of your processes, retraining some people, and perhaps even some of your technology tool set that you have. Could you maybe talk about the last one, the technology tool set? How can one think about selecting a technology capability that can help them with ESG data reporting?
I think the first thing is to know that there's no one size fits it all. And I think the second thing is to know that technology is only an enabler. So if I think of data, I think of a rectangular shape, and I think of where am I going at the top from a strategy perspective? What are my needs? ESG reporting, my KPIs. What do I need to get there? What are my sources of my data? And then who is the resources that can take me there? And then I think only of the technology that is needed to support the different sides of the rectangle.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And now if you think about it, in today there's probably, you can think of specialized ESG software that has all of these, that has frameworks and methodologies and templates for reporting built in, but you can also think of data management systems with data architecture that allows you to connect to different sources and to combine these sources, put the right governance over it, and also report on ESG data.
Just handly to help our viewers out there, in your view, how mature are the current solutions that are available out there in the market? If you think about head of ESG reporting or reporting in general at one of our clients, thinking about selecting a system, are the systems available? How mature are they? How long do you think it will take for one to buy, plug, and play?
I think one has to be very pragmatic at this point in time, and you really have to know where you're going and rather spend the time understanding your data and your needs and your requirements. And you can do that through prototyping, etc., because ESG is still evolving. And it's also about making sure that when you choose a system, that you set yourself up for agility. So yes, I spoke about data platforms, and there are many data platforms, big scale data platforms out there, and some of these platforms are building ESG frameworks, etc., into their capability, supported by that data architecture. And then you also see your big ERP software providers starting to build the ESG reporting specifically into their solutions as well. And then you see some bespoke, but it's again that thing about we don't know what we don't know yet.
Yes.
So it's important to set yourself up for agility and scalability.
Yes. I mean that makes a lot of sense to me because the topic is evolving. It's relatively new to many of us. And so, do you have some examples you can share of some of the interesting solutions that are out there that you've seen or heard of at your clients and in the market? Yeah.
I think, and maybe here I should speak rather about if it was a perfect world, or what would I do,
Mm,
because if I had to look at solving the ESG puzzle, I would probably look at leveraging both data architecture components as well as specialized software, and
mm,
look for companies where they have combined those features into one.
mm,
And the reason why I'm saying that, so if you think of data architecture and you think of that rectangle left to right, you're going to
mm,
source your data. Data architecture allows you to source from multiple sources. It
mm,
allows you to land that data. It helps you then to transform that data into your reporting requirements, but also combine that data from the multiple sources, as well as that layer of data governance, ensuring that your quality is correct.
mm,
Now, and then you think of your specialized software. Your specialized software, ESG, we don't know what we don't know. So the frameworks, the methodologies, the reporting templates, it's complex
mm,
and it's broad. So
mm.
your specialized software actually stays up to date with the regulation and the latest thinking. So
Yeah.
it helps you to simplify
Mm,
it. So now, if by combining these two into one solution,
mm.
think of it as scrambling an egg. Once you scramble an egg, you can't unscramble it.
Indeed.
So with data architecture, your data at is unscrambled, and you can actually now leverage that data for
Mm,
multiple purposes,
mm,
including sending it to your specialized ESG software. But
mm.
if your regulation then changes, that data is still there and it can be used to adapt to the new
Yes,
requirement, and it
yes.
can evolve. But you can also use it for multiple other use cases.
Mm,
Plus, the data that you now have, you can also apply the other sexy tools from a data architecture perspective on it,
mm,
because it's also about driving new insights. So
mm,
you can use artificial intelligence, you can use advanced analytics, machine learning, predictive machine learning. You can even look at the large language models or sentiment analysis,
mm.
and then you can create new data around your ESG performance metrics.
Oh, fabulous. Now, having said that, I mean, I take a word that you've used, data as an asset. Is this a kind of asset you can now sweat to use it for many other things that you never thought you would? So, is this an opportunity for us to think about ESG reporting, but as we source that data, transform it, optimize it, think of using it for many other things in our business that we thought we would never use it for before?
That is exactly the key, because it is about gather it once, clean it once, and use it multiple times, and even use it to create new data. So when you set up data as an asset, it's really important to know that data is almost like ESG. It's also a puzzle.
Mm,
It has numerous pieces that has to work interconnected.
mm,
So if you take the data management body of knowledge, for instance, it is supported by the data management functions. And when you roll up these functions, they roll up into data architecture, the data model, and our data governance framework and operating model. So now if you're setting data up as an asset, it is really important to get these three strategic pillars right, to say, like you've said, how do I use the data then in the rest of my organization for other purposes as well?
mm,
So if you think of the data model, and we just think of the top-down, bottom-up approach again, at the right side of the rectangle, you have your needs of where do you want to go, so your KPIs in terms
mm,
of your data model. On the left, you have your data sources,
mhm,
and that is really, so on the right side, you have your relevance and materiality. On the left, you have your data availability and quality.
mhm.
Then in terms of your middle is your standardization and your harmonization. So that is the path about getting your data right. And then if you say, okay, now What about the data framework and the operating model? How do I get that right to set data up as an asset? Then it's around saying, okay, so the data framework is when that data moves from left to right, what are my policies and standards and processes to make sure that it's governed and keep the quality consistent, etc. But also from an operating model. On the right-hand side with the KPIs, who owns that data? Who owns the quality of the data from a source perspective? Also, who is moving that data? And then who's tracking this whole process from an ownership as well as a STLC movement of the data perspective? So you have to get your framework in place and you have to get your operating model in place. And then only is it the data architecture or the sexy tools, which also comes back to the question you asked me earlier on in terms of how do you choose your technology. Don't choose your technology until you've looked at all those other aspects, because they need to work together with your technology in terms of setting data up as an asset. But now think of it this way. We spoke about this puzzle evolving, right? So if you have now set up your data as an asset, actually it means new puzzles can now be added to the box. And you have the ability to use those puzzle pieces with your other puzzle pieces. And you have the ability to shape completely new puzzles.
Hanley, it's been very insightful. Thank you very much for taking the time to share some of your thoughts with us. Thank you.
Thank you.